Good morning. Barry Bryson here. Thank you for joining me for another 5 good minutes with the Word. We are continuing our study of the book of Amos, and we're bringing to a close this opening section in which Amos crisscrosses the map and addresses the nations surrounding the northern kingdom and brings to bear God's judgment, irrevocable judgment. I will not revoke the judgment, the consequences I have. And we've had six nations already, three that they're not in any way related to. The Phoenicians, the Philistines, excuse me, and the Arameans, um, and the war crimes that are mentioned there. And the judgment is severe, but not as severe for the next three. We've got fire consuming, I'm going to destroy your nation. Um, but then the nation is not just being destroyed, but there's extra added on to the next three. The next three nations are nations they are related to: the Edomites, who are descended from Esau, the Ammonites, and the Moabites, who are descended from Lot. But with all six of these nations, God has a different arrangement, a different expectation, because he has a special covenant with the Jews. So with Judah, the southern kingdom, and Israel, the northern kingdom, we're shifting. We've only been talking about war crimes to this point. We've not been talking about idolatry. We've not been talking about anything else but the war crimes. But with Judah and Israel, there are other things that he's going to be talking about, and we see that immediately when we talk about the judgment against Judah. Judah and Israel have had an off and on a varied relationship since Jeroboam the first rebelled against Rehoboam after the death of Solomon and established the northern kingdom. Although it seems all the way back to the time of of, um, of Samuel, even that the 10 northern tribes felt a little differently than the two southern tribes, and as Saul is raising troops early on in First Samuel, it will mention the troops that were raised from the northern tribes and then the troops that were raised from Judah. Um, and after the death of Saul, it takes a long time, years, for the 10 northern tribes to accept David as king, when Judah and Benjamin immediately do. So there must have been some sort of a difference between North and South earlier on than just Jeroboam's rebellion. Jeroboam's rebellion tapped into some differences that already existed, and that probably made it easier for him to lead the 10 northern kingdoms into revolt. Okay, this is but before we get the text, there are times like in 2 Kings chapter 3 that they join forces against mutual enemies, and then there are times when they're at war with each other. But more often than not, they have at least an uneasy alliance, the northern kingdom and the southern kingdom. Okay, the southern kingdom, their brother nation. Thus says the Lord, for 3 transgressions of Judah and for 4, I will not revoke its punishment, because they rejected the law of Yahweh and have not kept his statutes. Their lies also have led them astray, those after which their fathers walked. So I will send fire upon Judah and will consume the citadels of Jerusalem. Um, what they're guilty of is is breaking God's law, not keeping their special covenant, and that is in a variety of ways, which you can read about in the writing prophets of the southern kingdom. And their sins are the same as the sins of the northern kingdom. They are idolatrous. They go to other nations for for support, for protection. They make treaties with other nations instead of depending upon God, and they do not practice social justice. And then there's the added level of immorality as well that is also condemned. But we have just generally, you're not keeping the law, and then specifically, you're walking in the ways your father walked. That's code for idolatry. You are following the worship of idol. Let me just say for just a moment the persistence of idolatry among the Jews, at least until the Babylonian captivity. Even during the time of David, there was idolatry going on. When you read about the good kings like Joash and Josiah, you'll read things, excuse me, like, they restored the worship of Yahweh. Yahweh was worshipped in Israel. Only they didn't tear down the high places. And it's unclear whether idols were worshipped on the high places or God was worshipped in a way he wasn't supposed to be. But the high places are the traditional worship places of in the Baal cult, and so that just persisted even during the times of good kings. When we read about Hezekiah in Second Kings and in Chronicles, we're told that he finally destroyed the Nehushtan, the bronze serpent that Moses himself made, and that the Jews, even during the days of David, were worshiping idolatrously. So idolatry runs deep. Um, um, we read about household idols when we read about Saul, household idols when we read about Jacob and Rachel and Leah and Laban. What was all that about? There has been um, at least a level of superstition and at times a full blown pursuit of idolatry. And during the days of Manasseh, they did everything. They tried absolutely everything they could except worship the one true God. Okay, so so that's what's happening to Judah, and that is why. And as we said before we move on, the promise of this punishment, every bit of it is accomplished by the Assyrian invasion and captivity, and then in the case of Judah and Edom, the Babylonian captivity, invasion and captivity. So um, God's judgment is being accomplished by nation states that are themselves evil and who will themselves be judged. Um, okay, he's going to get to the point because everything else he has to say is about Israel. And we're going to pick up that thread with verse 6 next time. Thank you for joining me for another 5 good minutes with the Word.